Okay, we are here with Eddard VIII. Eddard VIII is quite famously the small council scene about the assassination of Daenerys, where Eddard quits as Hand. Um, Great chapter, very short, very breezy. A lot in here. People love it. This is probably some of people's favorite chapters in a Game of Thrones. This one just kind of famous, takes place about halfway through the book and sets in sort of a major piece of action. I mean, shifts the Daenerys story to get it actually going. Um, and I would argue that Eddard VIII also, when we're talking about Catelyn's mistake in kidnapping or arresting Tyrion. Um, One of the big things that people forget is that Catelyn doesn't know that Ned is going to quit as Hand and remove all of the power he has there. Um, she also doesn't know that Tywin is a maniac and doesn't care about his child. But that's really important. Now, inversely, Ned does know that Catelyn has arrested Tyrion. And I actually think that Ned, in this chapter where he's trying to be honorable and he's overwhelmed by emotion and things like this, he really does Cat a disservice. He really does her and his entire cause a disservice by quitting here. He should have delayed or something, um, because he knows that she has kidnapped, arrested Tyrion. The king does not. It's a huge bomb that's going to be dropped on the Seven Kingdoms, and Ned decides, I'm just gonna quit and create this huge rift between himself and Robert without even thinking about it. He doesn't think about Cat at all through this chapter, which is a really big mistake. A really big mistake. It was, yeah. So, again, like people trashing Cat. It's really Ned here. Ned, she thought Ned was the Hand of the King, and here he is quitting being Hand of the King. So, you got to play. You got to if this is a card game, you got to play with your partner. You got to play with your partner. And Ned doesn't. But let's get into this. This is a great chapter. Robert, I beg of you, Ned pleaded. Hear what you're saying. You're talking of murdering a child. Um, and there's so many things in here. Obviously, you're supposed to think about Jon Snow in this chapter, or whatever secrets Ned has in his past that make him so emotional. But also you're supposed to think like about Ned's execution at the beginning of the book, um, and such, which comes up. The whore is pregnant. The king's fist slammed down on the council table, loud as a thunderclap. I warned you this would happen, Ned. Back in the Barrowlands, I warned you, but you did not care to hear it. Well, you'll hear it now. I want them dead, mother and child both, and that fool Viserys as well. Is that plain enough for you? I want them dead. Um, this is really kind of ridiculous because he brings up the Barrowlands, and they kind of go, oh, well, what's the big deal? She's getting married. Especially at this time, this is the world before the pill. I mean, fantasy world that doesn't have the pill. Of course Daenerys was gonna get pregnant. Like, of course, that's what happens. Really, Robert shouldn't be this angry. I understand that he has, uh, a lot of emotion about Targaryens that also is contradictory because they retconned him to make his grandmother a Targaryen, which means his mother is a Targaryen by the logic here, because he's talking about Daenerys' child being a Targaryen spawn. Well, that means his mom was a Targaryen spawn. He's speaking ill of his own mother. Um, But it was completely expected. Like she was married, and now she's pregnant. Like, of course, that's the whole circle of life. Is this? Yeah. He says, "I warned you this would happen." Of course, it was going to happen. I mean, it's really, of course. I want them dead. The other counselors were all doing their best to pretend they were somewhere else. No doubt they were wiser than he was. Eddard Stark had seldom felt quite so alone. "You will dishonor yourself forever if you do this." Probably not. Every king does some pretty bad stuff. "Then let it be on my head, so long as it's done. I'm not so blind that I cannot see the shadow of the axe when it's hanging over my neck." Now, the interesting thing here is Robert understands fully that this is a dishonorable act. Like, that's not the argument. He's still doing it. He says, let it be on my head. Like, he understands completely that this is a dishonorable act. He agrees with Ned. He is doing the dishonorable act because he feels that he has to, for various reasons. I mean, we're led to believe that emotion is the strongest one, and it's that's probably true. But the small council puts forward the more draconian arguments. "There is no axe," Ned told the king. "Only the shadow of a shadow, 20 years removed, if it exists at all." "If," Varys asked softly, wringing powdered hands together, "my lord, you wrong me. Would I bring ties to king and council? Would I bring lies? Would I bring lies to king and council?" Ned looked at the eunuch coldly. "You would bring us the whispers of a traitor half a world away, my lord. Perhaps Mormont was wrong. Perhaps he's lying." Really bad arguments. Obviously, it's there to just bring up Mormont, but like trying to be like, "Oh, Daenerys isn't pregnant." Like, she's a married woman. Like, she's a married fertile woman. Like of course she's gonna be pregnant. Like, of course. Like, being like, "Oh, Mormont is whispering and lying." Like, it's quite it rings desperate here. So Jorah would not dare deceive me, Varys said with a sly smile. "Rely on it, my lord. The princess is with child. Of course she is." "So you say. If you are wrong, we need not fear. If the girl miscarries, we need not fear. If she births a daughter in place of a son, we need not fear." It means she'll eventually have boys. That's the idea. I mean, she won't, but in their mind, whatever. The argument really shouldn't be whether she's going to have a boy. It's whether or not they're going to invade, which is the much stronger argument. But yeah, he goes on here. He's throwing desperate arguments here. "If the baby dies in infancy, we need not fear. But if it is a boy," Robert insisted, "if he lives." And of course, they're being quite dumb in saying that it's no threat unless it's a boy, like, as if there haven't been woman warriors in this world. But that's obviously that point is being pushed here. Like, oh, this is going to be a woman warrior that they actually have to fear, and they're sitting there being all sexist. And here's the big thing: is the narrow sea would still lie between us. I shall fear the Dothraki the day they teach their horses to run on water. Westeros has a really great navy. The Dothraki fear getting in ships. It's logistically very difficult to bring an army across water. This is the strongest argument, not that about whether or not Daenerys is actually pregnant and she's going to have a boy. From where they're sitting, she will eventually have a boy, but she won't eventually have the motivation for the Dothraki to invade. And of course, the irony of the situation is they create the motivation here. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, that they're creating it. The king took a swallow of wine and glowered at Ned. across the council table. So you would counsel me to do nothing until the dragon spawn has landed his army on my shores. Is that it? Now, it's interesting that they actually all jump to the conclusion that only the child would be able to lead the Dothraki and not Khal Drogo. Which is, of course, Daenerys's and Viserys's idea is that Khal Drogo is going to do it. But they all have this idea that only the child would grow up and be able to do it. And it never occurs to them that Khal Drogo would do it. So you'd counsel me to do nothing until the dragon spawn has landed on army on my shores. Is that it? This dragon spawn is in his mother's belly, Ned said. Even Aegon did no conquering until after he was weaned. He is talking about it being very many, many years in the future, which is true. If they're on this agreed idea that it's the son that would be the invading force. Gods, you're stubborn as an oryx, Stark. I mean, I guess it's this idea that Westeros wouldn't accept a female ruler and they would only accept a male one. But of course, yeah, they're again forgetting about Viserys and King. The whole plan of Khal Drogo invading and crowning Viserys, and they're all thinking, oh, they would only accept this like son. Gods, you are as stubborn as an oryx, Stark. The king looked around the council table. Have the rest of you mislaid your tongues? Will no one talk sense into this frozen-faced fool? Varys gave the king an unctuous smile and laid a soft hand on Ned's sleeve. I understand your qualms, Eddard Stark. Truly I do. It gave me no joy to bring this grievous news to council. It is a terrible thing we contemplate, a vile thing. Yet we who presume to rule must do vile things for the good of the realm, however much it pains us. No discussion of Viserys. At this point, don't you think like an attack on Khal Drogo's wife might inspire Khal Drogo to invade for Viserys? Nobody considers that. Renly shrugged. The matter seems simple enough to me. We ought to have had Viserys. There's Viserys. Viserys and his sister killed years ago. I mean, it's true that the assassination should include Viserys. If you're going to kill Daenerys, you might as well kill Viserys at the same time. Renly's the only one to point that out. But His Grace, my brother, made the mistake of listening to Jon Arryn. So Jon Arryn was the one stopping the assassinations. Renly was totally on board. Yeah, why wouldn't they try to assassinate Viserys at the same time? Mercy has never mistake, Lord Renly, Ned replied. On the trident, Sir Barristan here cut down a dozen good men, Robert's friends and mine. When he brought him to us grievously wounded and near death, Roose Bolton urged us to cut his throat. But your brother said, I will not kill a man for loyalty, nor for fighting well, and sent his own maester to tend Sir Barristan's wounds. He gave the king a long, cool look. Would that man were here today. This Roose Bolton, this is fascinating about this chapter is there's a few Easter eggs for foreshadowing of future stuff. This is the first mention of Bolton. First mention of the house. First mention of the man. But it's right here we're establishing that this is a cruel, dishonorable house. Right. This is the first mention of it all. But your brother said, I will not kill... he's talking to Renly. But your brother said, I will not kill a man for his loyalty, nor fighting well, and sent the maester to tend Sir Barristan's wounds. He gave the king a long, cool look. Would that man were here today. Robert had shame enough to blush. It was not the same, he complained. Sir Barristan was a knight of the Kingsguard, whereas Daenerys is a 14-year-old girl. Ned knew he was pushing this well beyond past the point of wisdom, yet he could not keep silent. He should be thinking about Cat. Like, Robert, I ask you, what did we rise against Aerys Targaryen for, if not to put an end to the murder of children? I mean, I suppose when he's talking about the murder of children here, he's talking about Lyanna when he says that. And so we have this connection of Lyanna to, because I don't know, like when we think about the murder, like I don't know if we'd consider Brandon Stark a child that was murdered by Aerys, right? Brandon was 20 when he died, so he must be speaking of Lyanna. But it's interesting to frame her as the, if he knows that she didn't wish that she wasn't murdered, but he believes that Robert believes that she was murdered, But yes, he's saying, why did we do this? Not to stop the murder of children, as in Lyanna. And he's saying, oh, the reverse, like not for the protection of Lyanna, but for the vengeance against Rhaegar. But this is kind of the this dichotomy is what we are constantly faced with in Ice and Fire. What is justice? Is justice the protection of people, or is justice vengeance against people that have done something wrong? And we're faced with that many, many times. Ned seems to believe that justice is protection, and Robert is pushing forward that justice is vengeance. Your Grace, I never knew you to fear Rhaegar. Ned fought to keep the scorn out of his voice and failed. Have the years so unmanned you that you tremble at the shadow of an unborn child? What I like here, this is a funny line because Ned tries to insult Robert's manliness, and Robert, I mean, he gets upset, but he passes it by. Robert purpled. No more, Ned, he warned, pointing. Not another word. Have you forgotten who is your king here? No, your Grace, Ned replied. Have you? So, the argument here so far, if we go back, Ned starts with the argument that the news isn't true, that it's a lie, which is a pretty weak argument. And then he goes to the argument of it doesn't matter because it's not really a threat. And that's kind of rejected. That's probably his strongest argument. And then he goes into that this is dishonorable and not just. And that's rejected as well. And then he goes past that into it's not manly, which is pretty weak. So he kind of, starts with weak arguments, gets strong, goes back to weak arguments. Enough. I'm sick of the talk. I'll be done with it. Or be damned. What say you all? So now Robert is kind of, even though he said the decision's on him, he's now kind of going to a vote. And Renly's like, you know what? She must be killed. Like, I wanted her and Viserys killed years ago. That's we have no choice, murmured Varys. Sadly. Of course, Varys wants this because he knows he wants to botch it to give motivation for the invasion. He's actually like creating the threat here rather than trying to get rid of the threat. It's a clever little ruse from Varys. Sir Barristan Selmy raised his pale blue eyes from the table and said, Your Grace, there's There's honor in facing an enemy on the battlefield, but none in killing him in his mother's womb. Forgive me, but I must stand with Lord Eddard. Again, it's like the threat is the child. The threat, for some reason, Viserys, not the threat. Viserys, a full-grown male Targaryen, not the threat. But this like child of, I guess they're just thinking all in the terms of feudal succession and ownership, that Viserys doesn't own the Dothraki, but this child would, which is wrong, but it's in the mindset of the of Westerosi feudalism. Grand Maester Pycelle cleared his throat, a process that seemed to take some minutes, just like me. My order serves the realm, not the ruler. He just pulls this bull crap because we know that like he is a Lannister crony. Once I counseled Aerys as loyally as I counsel Robert now, as in not well at all. So I bear this girl child, no ill will. Yet I ask you this: should war come, how many soldiers will die? How many towns will burn? How many children will be ripped from their mothers to perish on the end of spears? He stroked his luxuriant white beard, infinitely sad, infinitely weary. Is it not wiser, even kinder, that Daenerys Targaryen should die now so that tens of thousands might live? So I think the fandom, rightfully takes Pycelle's argument and asks this question, like, is Pycelle right? If Dany were dead, and assuming that Dany's eventually going to invade Westeros and everything, and cause this massive war, is Pycelle correct that it's better to do this? And it's one of these philosophical questions. We're supposed to, of course, say no. Like, we're supposed to side with Ned. This child hasn't done anything yet. He's innocent. And it's true. So many things would happen. In fact, the child dies. So there's no threat. There's no threat from a child. And had Daenerys not, assuming, say, that Mirri Maz Duur actually poisoned her and did all of that weird stuff, which we don't know, and that the child would have been born hale and healthy, would the Dothraki have ever invaded? Because Khal Drogo kind of wanted to go east, and he didn't have any vengeance on his mind, and he was just puttering around and delaying and delaying and delaying. So, it's true that probably there would have been no war, but and then taking away Mirri Maz Duur, this is the child's going to die in the womb, it's going to be stillborn. So we're supposed to see Pycelle's argument as disingenuous, and it is a disingenuous argument. He doesn't serve them; he serves himself. This is good for Lannisters if the Targaryens die, and it's not on him. It's on Robert. Kinder very said, "Oh, well and true spoken, Grand Maester. It is so true. Should the gods in their caprice grant Daenerys Targaryen the son, the realm must bleed." Varys doesn't believe this at all. Littlefinger was last. As Ned looked to him, Lord Peter stifled a yawn. So Littlefinger constantly is making his dick jokes and sex jokes. So here it is. When you find yourself in bed with an ugly woman, the best thing to do is to close your eyes and get on with it, he declared. Waiting won't make the maid any prettier. Kiss her and be done with it. This is a weird, and granted, like for anyone else, you're like, well, why are you in bed with an ugly woman? Oh, well, you're in bed with an ugly woman because you've been married to her or something, like through an arranged marriage. But it's also like, it's not anything that anyone at the table can relate to, because Ned's wife is quite attractive, and Renly is gay, and Pycelle is maester and is celibate. Barristan is a king's guard and is celibate. Robert is married to a hot woman. The only person that it would relate to is Stannis, right? But so you're like, what is Littlefinger? And Littlefinger's not married at this point. It becomes, you could say it becomes relevant later when he marries Lysa, though Lysa is never described as ugly. She's gotten big in her age, but whatever the case, it's a weird thing. I mean, obviously it's supposed to be funny, and he's right. She's not going to get any prettier. Just get it over with. But it's kind of a funny thing. Like when you find yourself in the bed with an ugly woman, how about get out of the bed if you're worth the ugly woman? But I think he's talking about if you're married. But he's never been married, and everybody else is married to hot chicks or celibate. It's so weird or gay, It's kind of funny in the context how clueless it makes Littlefinger seem. Like he's trying to make this joke, and it's like read the room, and no one in the room would understand this joke. And so Barristan's like, "Huh? What? Kiss her?" Sir Barristan repeated. He's like, "A steel kiss," said Littlefinger. It seems all just be set up for this joke. Steel kiss. Robert turned his face to his hand. I mean, it's the equivalent of shit or get off the pot, right? Robert turned his face to the hand. "Well, there it is, Ned. You and Selmy stand alone in this matter. The only question that remains is, who can we find to kill her?" "Mormont craves a royal pardon," Lord Renly reminded them. "Desperately," Varys said, "yet he craves life even more. By now the princess nears Vaes Dothrak, where it is death to draw a blade. If I told you what Dothraki would do to a poor man who used one on a Khaleesi, none of you would sleep tonight." This is, of course, is foreshadowing. It's very clear at this point that George has come up with how he's going to kill Viserys. And the incident that is pretty well established here. We do know that the Daenerys story, George kind of finishes it before he finishes everything else. And publishes Blood of the Dragon and all of that. So George gets into a groove with Daenerys and finishes. So it's probably pretty clear that at this point George knows what he's doing with Viserys. But it is kind of funny because the assassination doesn't happen well, does it? I forget where the wine cellar is. They've already killed. It happens after they've killed. I guess. Yeah. No, it is still in Vaes Dothrak. Still, it's because they go to the markets. Yeah, he does kill her in Vaes Dothrak, but through poison. He stroked a powdered cheek. "Now poison. This is what's funny. The tears of lice, let us say. Khal Drogo need never know it was a natural death." So, Grand Maester Pycelle's sleepy eyes flicked open. He squinted suspiciously at the eunuch. So, Pycelle definitely knows that Jon Arryn was killed with the tears of lice. And he even kind of suspected Varys before and told Ned that he suspected Varys of things, of bad stuff. And because he says oh, poison is a woman's weapon and a eunuch's. He's definitely already suspicious. So this is why Pycelle is his eyes flick open, because now he's pretty sure that even though he's wrong, that Varys killed Jon Arryn. It should also draw attention to Littlefinger, because Littlefinger used tears of lice on Jon Arryn, but we don't get Littlefinger's reaction. But it's kind of Varys is almost mocking the room, or mocking Pycelle and Littlefinger at this point. I mean, he's not. I guess he's not sure of Littlefinger's plan, so he doesn't know if Littlefinger killed Jon Arryn. But he seems to know that it was tears of lice, which is curious, But this open secret, we all know Jon Arryn was poisoned with tears of lice, so I'm going to bring that up here. Poison is a coward's weapon, the king complained. Ned had heard enough. You said hired knives to kill a 14-year-old girl, and still you quibble about honor. He pushed back his chair and stood. Do it yourself, Robert. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Of course, that know that initial execution was not just. Which brings us back to thinking about the others, which brings us back to like, no, you can't kill Dany. She's supposed to save us from the others if you are believing all the dragon, if you already have figured out that there's going to be dragons. Look her in the eyes before you kill her. See her tears, hear her last words. You owe her that much. Yeah, you didn't really listen to the last words well enough, Ned. Gods, the king swore, the word exploding out of him as if he could barely contain his fury. You mean it, damn it. Damn you. He reached for the flagon of wine at his elbow, found it empty, and flung it away to shatter against the wall. I am out of wine and out of patience. Enough of this. Just have it done. I will not be part of murder, Robert. Do as you will, but do not ask me to fix my seal to it. For a moment, Robert did not seem to understand what Ned was saying. Defiance was not a dish he tasted often, except from Cersei every day. Slowly, his face changed as comprehension came. His eyes narrowed, and a flush crept up his neck past the velvet collar. He pointed an angry finger at Ned. You are the king's hand, Lord Stark. You will do as I command, or I'll find me a hand who will. I wish him every success. Ned unfastened the heavy clasp that clutched at the folds of his cloak, the ornate silver hand that was his badge of office. He laid it on the table in front of the king, saddened by the memory of the man who had pinned it on him, the friend he had loved. I thought you a better man than this, Robert. I thought we had made a nobler king. Robert's face was purple. Out, he croaked, choking out his rage. Now, of course, in all of this, people kind of say, why is Ned so attached to Dany? And some people say, well, Dany is a stand-in for Jon in his mind. He's thinking about how Robert would deal with Jon, or he's thinking about some sort of other secret, perhaps some past thing he had with Ashara Dane, or maybe, Ned is just really likes kids, honorable guy. It might just be that. Robert's face was purpled. Out, he croaked, choking on his rage. Out, damn you, or he's thinking about Lyanna. Out, damn you, I'm done with you. I swear I'll have your head on a spike. Ned bowed and turned his heel without another word. He could hear Robert's eyes on his back. As he strode from the council chambers, the discussion resumed with scarcely a pause. On Braavos, there's a society called the Faceless Men, Grand Maester Pycelle offered. This is the first reference to Faceless Men that we get in the story. And obviously it's just supposed to be an introduction. I think people read into this conversation about the Faceless Men a little much, but gotta remember, this is the first mention. So it's just kind of some exposition for its establishment. But we do get this idea that George has in his mind that he's going to send Arya to Braavos to study with the Faceless Men. He doesn't know how. He's created a teacher that's from Braavos, but that doesn't go anywhere actually, and he chooses a different path to get her to Braavos. But it's very clear at this point that George now knows what he wants to do with Arya. And then Littlefinger says, "Do you have any idea how costly they are? You could hire an army of common sellswords for half the price, and that's for a merchant. I don't dare to think what they might ask for a princess." So this is the idea that Littlefinger has inquired with Faceless Men before. A lot of people think about the costliness of it. George has retconned the Faceless Men quite a bit. I mean, we can look at Jaqen and Hagar's situation about death paying for life and you needing to do 3 kills because you saved 3 people, and then this idea that people give up their entire lives or service, all men must serve, is how they eventually start classifying the Faceless Men. and that there's different costs for different people, maybe based on what you have. None of that is established here. So, like, you know, George doesn't know what the Faceless Men are yet. So, you know, how much to charge Littlefinger and things like that. So he hasn't even gotten into the weirdness of Jock and Agar's like 3 kills and things like that. So it's just a basic introduction. The Faceless Men exist, and they're really expensive, and they're really competent. The closing of the doors behind them silenced the voices. Sir Boris Blount was stationed outside the chamber, wearing the long white cloak and armor of the King's Guard. He gave Ned a quick, curious glance out of the corner of his eye, but he asked no questions. Now, Boris Blount is, you know, supposedly one of Cersei's creatures, so Blount kind of just will tell everything to Cersei. Not that it's too important. Like, what happens here isn't that important. The day felt heavy and oppressive as he crossed the bailey back to the Tower of the Hand. He could feel the threat of rain in the air. I mean, well, maybe it's important in that he would tell Cersei, he would tell Jaime, and then Jaime feels liberated to attack Ned. The day felt heavy and oppressive as he crossed the bailey back to the Tower of the Hand. He could feel the threat of rain in the air. Ned would have welcomed it. It might have made him feel a trifle less unclean. When he reached his solar, he summoned Van Poole, the steward Kim at once. "You sent for me, my Lord Hand. Hand no longer. The king and I have quarreled. We shall be returning to Winterfell." Which, again, not the smartest thing, considering that Ned knows that Catelyn has kidnapped Tyrion. So at this point, like, even in his head, he'd be like, well, if war is coming or disagreement is coming, he's kind of lost Robert and the king. He's lost the king, and he's lost the Stormlands and things like this. It's really it's a foolish situation, and it's just weird that he doesn't even think about Catelyn. "I shall begin making arrangements at once, my lord. We will need a fortnight to ready everything for the journey." "We may not have a fortnight. We may not have a day. The king mentioned something about seeing my head on a spike." Ned frowned. He did not truly believe the king would harm him, not Robert. He was angry now, but once Ned was safely out of sight, his rage would cool as it always did. Always, suddenly, uncomfortably, he found himself recalling Rhaegar Targaryen. 15 years dead. Yet Robert hates him as much as ever. It was a disturbing notion. And there was the other matter, the business with Catelyn and the dwarf. Finally! Like, you should have been... that Yoren warned him of last night. That would come to light soon, as sure as sunrise. And with the king in such a black fury, Robert might not care a fig for Tyrion Lannister, but he would not touch his pride, and there was no telling what the queen might do. See, it was really, really foolish. Tacked on here. Finally, he gets Catelyn. As some sort of random afterthought. I mean, Robert's hatred of Rhaegar is more than Catelyn. "It might be the safest if I went ahead," he told Poole. "I will take my daughters and a few guardsmen. The rest of you can follow when you are ready. Inform Jory, but tell no one else. And do nothing until the girls and I have gone. The castle's full of eyes and ears, and I would rather my plans were not known. As you command, my lord." When he had gone, Eddard Stark went to the window and sat brooding. Robert had left him no choice that he could see. He ought to thank him. It would be good to return to Winterfell. He ought to have never left. His sons were waiting there. Perhaps he and Catelyn would make a new son together when he returned. They were not so old yet, and of late he had often found himself dreaming of snow, of the deep quiet of the Wolfswood at night. This is all unannounced. A thought about plan never comes to fruition. So here we're getting the thought about plan, the announced plan, the thought about plan. This is George presents something and then subverts it. This is how it's done. Yet the thought of leaving angered him as well. So much was still undone. Robert and his council of cravens and flatterers would beggar the realm if left unchecked. Or worse, they'd sell to the Lannisters in payments of their loans. And the truth of Jon Arryn's death still eluded him. Oh, he had found a few pieces, enough to convince him that Jon was indeed had indeed been murdered, but that was no more than the spore of an animal on the forest floor. It's kind of a a spore is like the scent, but it does make me think of the direwolf. But the direwolf, he had a full carcass. He had not sighted the beast itself yet, though he sensed it was there, lurking, hidden, treacherous. It struck him suddenly that he might return to Winterfell by sea. Ned was no sailor, and ordinarily would have preferred the King's Road, but if he took ship, he could stop at Dragonstone and speak with Stannis Baratheon. What he should have done days ago, weeks ago. I mean, it only takes, a couple days to get to Dragonstone. Pycelle had sent a raven across the water with a polite letter from Ned requesting Stannis return to his seat on the small council. Yet there had been no reply, but the silence only deepened his suspicions. Lord Stannis shared the secret Jon Arryn had died for. He was certain of it. The truth he sought might very well be waiting for him on the ancient island fortress of House Targaryen. Then go! And when you have it, what then? Some secrets are safe or kept hidden. Some secrets are too dangerous to share, even with those you love and trust. Ned slid the dagger that Catelyn had bought him out of the sheath of his belt. The imp's knife. Why would the dwarf want Bran dead? To silence him, surely. Another secret. Or only a different strand of the same web. Could Robert be part of it? He would have thought so, but once he would have thought Robert could command the murder of women and children. Catelyn had tried to warn him. You knew the man, she had said. The king is a stranger to you. The sooner he was quit of King's Landing, the better. If there was a ship sailing north on the morrow, it would be well to be on it. I realize that, so this chapter is exceptionally short, only 3,000 words. And I realize, like, coming in here, I'm like, these paragraphs, none of these paragraphs are necessary. Like, here he is just like, we're spending a page just summarizing the plot. And I'm like, oh, this is why, because the chapter is too short on its own. So he's padding it out a little. He summoned Van Poole again and sent him to the docks to make inquiries quietly and quickly. Find me a fast ship with a skilled captain, he told the steward. I cared nothing for the size of the cabins or the quality of its appointments. So long as it's swift and safe, I wish to leave at once. Poole had no sooner taken his leave than Tomard announced a visitor. Baelish to see you, my lord. Ned was half tempted to turn him away, but thought better of it. He was not free yet. Until he was, he must play their games. Showman Tom. Lord Peter sauntered into the solar as if nothing had gone amiss that morning. He wore a slashed velvet doublet in cream and silver, a gray silver cloak trimmed with black fox, and his customary mocking smile. Ned greeted him coldly. Might I ask the reason for this visit, Lord Baelish? I won't detain you long. I'm on my way to dine with Lady Tanda. Lamprey pie and roast suckling pig. She has some thoughts to wed me to her younger daughter, so her table is always astonishing. If truth be told, I'd sooner marry the pig, but don't tell her. I do love lamprey pie. Lamprey pie is brought up a lot. Lamprey is eels. Eel is quite tasty because it's a very, very fatty fish. I think this is the first mention of Lady Tanda and her dinners and how she's always taking people to dinner, trying to marry her off to her special daughter. That's kind of funny. But yes, but it's again like he's, Littlefinger telling his jokes. Don't let me keep you from your eels, my lord, Ned said with icy disdain. At the moment, I cannot think of anyone whose company I desire less than yours. Oh, I'm certain if you put your mind to it, you could come across a few names. Varys, say, or Cersei, or Robert. His grace is most wroth with you. He went on about you at some length after you took your leave of us this morning. The words insolence and ingratitude came into it frequently, I seem to recall. Ned did not honor that with a reply. Nor did he offer his guest a seat, but Littlefinger took one anyway. After you stormed out, it was left to me to convince them not to hire the faceless men. He continued blithely. Instead, Varys will quietly let it be known that we'll make a lord of whoever does in the Targaryen girl. Ned was disgusted. So now we grant titles to assassins. Littlefinger shrugged. Titles are cheap. The faceless men are expensive. If truth be told, I did the Targaryen girl more good than you with all your talk of honor. Let some sellsword drunk on visions of lordship try to kill her. Likely, he'll make a botch of it, and afterwards the Dothraki will be on their guard. If we'd sent a faceless man after her, she'd be as good as buried. So this is this idea that the faceless men are quite competent and that they get the job done. But it is odd that Littlefinger would go about it, like, you know, would try that. What's Littlefinger's game? He wants Daenerys to live because that's more chaos or something, or, you know, it's very odd that he suddenly teams up with Varys here. Like, what's his game? We never know we never know Littlefinger's game. You know, does he know about Daenerys? Does he, you know, and all of their plans with like Viserys and their invasion and things like that? Like, does Illyrio, does he know any, you know? We don't know. We don't know if Littlefinger's just making random moves, because it just often seems like he's making random moves. Ned frowned. You sit in council and talk of ugly women and steal kisses, and now you expect me to believe that you try to protect the girl. How big a fool do you take me for? Well, quite an enormous one, actually, said Littlefinger, laughing. Do you always find murder so amusing, Lord Baelish? It's not murder I find amusing, Lord Stark. It's you. You rule like a man dancing on rotten ice. I dare say you will make a noble splash. I believe I heard the first crack this morning. I mean, you know, one could say that this comes all the way back with the Battle of Ice and the Winds of Winter, but yeah, maybe some coincidence. The first and last. I've had my fill. When do you mean to return to Winterfell, my lord? As soon as I can. What concern of it is yours? None. But if perchance you're still here come evenfall, I'd be pleased to take you to this brothel your man Jory has been searching for so ineffectually. Littlefinger smiled. And I won't even tell the Lady Catelyn. Yeah, so I mean, Littlefinger apparently does have spies too. He seems, or at least, you know, Jory's going around to the brothels, and the sex workers themselves tell Littlefinger. So I guess the idea would be that the sex workers are Littlefinger's spies, but the timing is quite. I mean, maybe Littlefinger read the room and knew that Ned was going to take off and was trying to take off fast, and that he needed to get in there quick. I mean, there's just so much Littlefinger, like the. See, it's one thing with Varys. Like, we know that Varys has little birds. We know Varys' plan. We know what Varys is doing for the most part through the story. There's a few exceptions, like why he's brought along with Littlefinger and things like that. Like why Varys summons Littlefinger to confront Catelyn about the dagger. We have no idea why he does that. But Littlefinger, yeah, it's just nothing Littlefinger does makes any sense. And everything seems to go his way. And it doesn't seem all planned out. We don't know how it works out. But coincidentally, yes, Ned is ready to leave town, and coincidentally, Littlefinger comes in and keeps him from leaving town. But yeah, a great chapter, very memorable. Yeah, a lot of things. He should have been thinking about Catelyn through the whole thing, and instead he just kind of thinks about Catelyn as an afterthought at the end, which is horrible move. But of course, the conversation is good. There's a lot of little great Easter eggs here. So I think this is probably, and there's some padding at the end, but it's a great chapter. Um, I think the George R. R. Martin is pretty great with dialogue, and every character you feel them being there, even though it's this heavy room. Like you feel Renly and you feel Barristan, you feel Varys, you feel Ned and Robert. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll what's next? What's next on our a Catelyn chapter? I think this is a super long Catelyn chapter here. So yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks.